Hola. Hola, hola, hola. Buenas tardes a todos, a todas. Muchísimas gracias por venir. Estamos muy contentas de teneros a todos como asistentes y también del panel tan interesante que vamos a juntar esta tarde. El día de hoy o la tarde de hoy es la segunda parte de la jornada de los encuentros profesionales de Japan Desu dedicada o destinada a diseño y la movilidad. Well, I want to say some words in English before I try to English to Spanish again, but I want to thank everyone for joining us today. It is with great pleasure that we host this meeting today that gathers four amazing experts that will show us a holistic vision of the future of mobility. They will bring us different approaches to speak about topics such relevant as infrastructure, automotive, aviation, or passenger experience. Now allow me to continue in Spanish, as they will continue in English, but I think it's important to give a general context for all of you. So, Japan Desu son estos encuentros, esta serie de encuentros que organiza DIMAT, que promueve DIMAT durante los meses de octubre, noviembre y parte de diciembre en relación a la cultura japonesa a través del diseño. En particular nos hemos centrado en tres ámbitos del diseño, que son la moda, la arquitectura y la automoción, como esas ámbitos, digamos, que responden al cuerpo humano, a la escala del cuerpo humano en su más directa traducción, podemos decir. Quiero agradecer enormemente a Nissan, que es el principal apoyo que tenemos para poder haber llevado a cabo esos encuentros, así como el Círculo Empresarial Japón-España, también el Ayuntamiento de Madrid y la Comunidad de Madrid, la Embajada del Japón y Nissan, ya lo he dicho, Uniqlo, Muji y ESNE, por favor. Ha sido muy importante todo el apoyo y el intercambio que hemos tenido, así como las conversaciones tan interesantes y las reflexiones que están sucediendo. Os invitamos a venir a las continuas actividades que van a tener lugar hasta el 2 de diciembre. Y bueno, sin más dilación, voy a hacer una breve introducción muy breve de las 4 personas que van a estar participando hoy aquí. Tenemos a Adrián Talbot, que es Head of Center of Excellence for Mobility en Ferrovial. Tiene más de 20 años de experiencia en transformación tecnológica y digital, desarrollando proyectos y estrategias para distintas compañías. Desde 2018 dirige el Centro de Excelencia de Movilidad e Infraestructura Digital de Ferrovial, que se centra en impulsar energías transversales a través de la innovación disruptiva en todas las unidades del negocio de Ferrovial a nivel mundial. Continuaremos con Client Alliance, que es vicepresidenta regional de Producto y Planificación de Servicios Nissan en África, Oriente Medio, India, Europa y Oceanía. Es experta en planeamiento, estrategia y desarrollo de producto. Tras sus más de 16 años en Nissan, su principal responsabilidad se centra en definir la estrategia de producto y la oferta óptima de productos a medio y largo plazo. Bruno St. James es director de diseño de Airbus. Cuenta con más de 20 años de experiencia en el sector de la aviación y ha desarrollado gran parte de su carrera en Airbus, liderando el diseño de la experiencia del pasajero. Algunos de los ejemplos más fundamentales de los trabajos que ha llevado a cabo son el diseño del interior del Airbus A350 y el concepto Plain Vision 2050. Y concluimos con Jaime Moreno, que tiene más de 25 años de experiencia diseñando productos, servicios y experiencias con Mormedi, la compañía que fundó en 1997. Uno de los principales focos de acción de Mormedi es en el ámbito de la movilidad, el sector en el que colabora con firmas como Airbus, Air Europa, Alstom, Audi AG, BMW AG, CAF, Hino, Hyperloop, Iberia, LG, Nissan, Philips, Renfe, entre muchos otros. Sin más dilación, le doy la palabra a todas ellos. Espero que disfrutéis muchísimo. Habrá una primera introducción de cada una de estas profesionales, después una mesa redonda en la que debatirán sobre algunos de los temas y por último le iremos a preguntas y comentarios de todos vosotros, así que por favor sentiros libres para pedir el micrófono cuando concluyamos. Muchísimas gracias.
Hi. Can you hear me all right? Perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, now I can hear myself. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Adrian. I'm not sure if there's much more to say other than what Maria just introduced, but I'll do my best. It's also nice to be here in Madrid speaking about Ferrovial. I'm usually speaking about Ferrovial in many other places, and I usually have to start by introducing Ferrovial, but to most of you in the audience, I think Ferrovial is one of the largest Spanish companies, is more well known, so I'm not going to spend too much time introducing Ferrovial as a, maybe if I press the right button, as a company. But what I am going to do is talk a little bit about the areas that we're focused on, and in particular, the role that we feel that infrastructure can play in the future of mobility. So, I think you all know Ferrovial, a Spanish company, global reach. We work in a number of different business units, highways, construction. We just drove past one of our building sites just on the way into this place today. Airports. Recently, we've announced a new business venture in vertiports for urban air mobility, and we'll hear more about that from Bruno later as well. But also energy and mobility generally, so non-infrastructure based mobility. So I'm not going to talk too much about these areas, but what I am going to talk about is the relevance of infrastructure. So from a Ferrovial perspective, our focus is very much on sustainable infrastructures for people on the move. That's our vision. And what does that mean? What does infrastructure mean in today's world? Well, we have some examples here from the large to the small. So one of the areas that I'm particularly focused on is around the digital and data infrastructure that we need in order to not only live our lives, but to move around. So digital infrastructure such as fiber connectivity, 5G, mobile connectivity, tolling infrastructure, and other such things, all very, very relevant, and is an additional enhancement to the traditional physical infrastructure of concrete and steel that we see and use every day and have used for many hundreds of years. The digital infrastructure element is something that has grown and become super important over the last 4 or 5 years and will only increase in importance for all of the things that we're going to talk about today. One of the things that is often overlooked when talking about digital infrastructure is the fact that most of these devices and things that we need to move around require one key element, which is power. So at the bottom, we also have the real focus around sustainable energy. But equally, in terms of that digital infrastructure, foundational infrastructure, we need to be able to power the devices that we use, the infrastructure that we use in terms of, a 5G antenna requires power, you need to get power there, so it's easily overlooked. And there's going to be more of that, so as well as EVs and EV tolls, the infrastructure itself is going to need additional power to sustain itself. Also, while Ferrovial historically hasn't actually done too much work in regards to micromobility, so e-scooters, bikes, although we do have had a bike sharing scheme in Barcelona. In terms of infrastructure required for micromobility in cities, we can see the difference between where there is an infrastructure element that works. For example, if you've been around the world, you'll have seen cities that have free-floating scooter solutions or free-floating bikes, but no infrastructure to support them. So basically, they're just littered everywhere. From a user perspective, from a safety perspective, it's not very interesting. But urban enhancements from the infrastructure, even at a small scale, can make a big difference. And of course, it's important in the overall aspect. And then we have the really big issues regarding the sustainable infrastructure, the need for EV charging, the need for some potentially for some hydrogen infrastructure to come into play. Super important that these are looked at in addition to the overall transition of the vehicles. If we look at shared autonomous mobility, it's obviously an area that is increasingly important. We will have seen recently both the news that there have been some shutdowns of autonomous vehicles or autonomous vehicle companies in the US, but at the same time we're seeing commercial operations start of autonomous vehicles in San Francisco, in Phoenix, in Florida. And it's worth pointing out that when it comes to autonomous mobility, we've actually had autonomous mobility in operation for many years, and Ferrovial has been at the forefront of delivering those kind of solutions. So I'm not sure whether you're aware, but the Docklands Light Rail was introduced in the late 80s in London. It's fully autonomous, has been for many years. The Heathrow pods at Heathrow have been there and operational for 10 years already. And now we're starting to get into a situation where the autonomous vehicles, level 4 autonomous vehicles, are starting to be introduced in mixed traffic. And that's going to have an impact on the way that roads are actually built, on the way that infrastructure is built to support them in their introduction and adoption. But like I said, Ferrovial has been working on this for many, many years, working with different aspects, and the full level 4 mixed traffic autonomy is something that is a natural evolution of where we have already been. And it's something that we will see on our streets in the next few years. And we're not talking about 5, 10 years, we're talking about 1 or 2 years before it will be a fairly commonplace thing to see an autonomous vehicle of some shape or form on our streets. If we then jump ahead to multimodal hubs, today we see bus stations, we see rail stations, we see airports, but traditionally they have been developed independently of each other. Increasingly we are seeing a drive towards what we call multimodal hubs, where all of these things can come together to create a much more integrated mobility solution. And this design here is just one which introduces multiple new areas, including eVTOLs and urban air mobility. But this is an area, again, that we will see changing the shape of our cities and urban areas in the coming years. Already there are plans in place in many capital cities around the world to make or to upgrade, whether it be rail stations or bus stations, into these kind of hubs. And most new developments, again, are factoring in this kind of operation. An area that I am particularly keen on developing and spending a lot of my time working on is the area of network orchestration, the ability to have centralized command, control, orchestration and facilitation of traffic of all shapes and sizes to ensure that you maximize capacity and throughput and integration of different modes. And whilst this is predominantly a software solution, it still very much benefits from a fully integrated infrastructure within that environment to be able to sense what's going on, provide data about what's happening and what the current situation is, but also to enable us to provide information back to the users of those transport modes through digital signage, through digital messaging on smartphones, through a whole variety of different aspects. But it's all about improving the customer service, the customer centricity, the information available, and improving the day-to-day use of mobility services. And I think, again, that's an area that the other speakers will talk about as well in terms of the need for the user centricity moving forward. So I won't talk so much about that. If you start looking to the future, again, Hyperloop is one of the areas that's been talked about for some time. Again, won't happen without any infrastructure because it's actually fully 100% dependent on infrastructure. And it is an area that we have been looking at, and we have seen a lot of developments in the last couple of years. Most recently within the EU, there has been an approval of a regulation framework in the last couple of weeks. So again, whilst this is still some years off before we see this in operation anywhere, it is moving forward. There is now a regulatory framework, and it is going to happen at some point in the future, whether it be for passengers or for logistics or both. I'm not going to talk too much about urban air mobility. I'm going to leave that to Bruno. But again, eVTOLs and flying taxis, urban air mobility, again, we believe that's going to happen. We're one of the leaders in the development of the infrastructure networks that are going to be required. And one of the common misconceptions, again, I think from from the development of these things is that there is an expectation that they're just small airports. Actually, nothing can be further from the truth. There's very little other than there is an aerial vehicle associated with these that is similar to an airport. The entire business model is different. The entire way that users or passengers flow through is going to be very different. The economics are very different to what we have today. So the whole experience of a vertiport for urban air mobility is going to be significantly different to what you might expect from such a thing. It will be closer to a rail experience than an airport experience. And then we have the long-term future. Again, whilst this is actually a spaceport, we're not currently involved in building spaceports, but certainly space is the next frontier and is an area that has already started development. There are already 3 or 4, quote, spaceports being built around the world. And whilst this is further afield than some of the other things, it's worth noting that, you know, if we are going to stay ahead and stay involved in this evolution of mobility, we have to, at some point, start thinking about space as the next frontier and as the next operation for us. So, with that, I will hand over to Clee to talk about Nissan.
So, hello everyone, and thanks Adrian. I think if I didn't work for Nissan, I'd be a little more excited about the urban air mobility idea. But working for Nissan, I'm not sure how I feel about it.
Complimentary, of course.
Well, yes, we have to make it so. Thank you for coming today, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. Everyone calls me Clee, which is fine for any questions later, because I'm from Ireland and my first name is overly complicated. Can we get the deck up?
Yes, full screen.
On the bottom right.
Okay, ready.
Great. So as it says, I'm the Regional Vice President for Product and Service Planning. And as Maria said, that means that I'm working in the future forecasting. We have teams in Nissan who are always looking at macro trends, market intelligence, market intelligence, using all of the data we have about how economies are evolving, how society is evolving, how regulation is evolving, plus a multitude of other things. And we put it all together to build scenarios about what that could mean for the auto industry moving forward, and in particular what it means for Nissan and where we want to be in that future society. All right. So, Nissan, where are we in this space? Well, we are charging towards an electric future. We're very clear on that. We see that the future of the auto industry, mid to long term, is fully electric. And we have very firmly put a stake in the ground on that. In Nissan, we announced last year our Ambition 2030, which basically means that we are targeting 3 things by 2030. We're targeting a cleaner, safer, a more inclusive world. And how do we contribute to that? Through our technologies and through our ecosystems that we want to build. Because looking to the future, what we see is the car isn't just to go from A to B, but what we see in Nissan as our vision is that the car should form an integral part of a full ecosystem, where it merges seamlessly in and out of all of our lives, and it connects and contributes to all the different parts of our lives. To get there, what does it mean? In 2026, we target 75% of our sales to be electrified, and by 2030, 100% of our sales in Europe to be electrified. And where we are right now is the first stepping stone to that. The reason I'm showing our lineup for Europe is because I think it helps understand Nissan's philosophy and Nissan's vision on this. On the very left, we have the Leaf. I guess most of you are familiar with the Leaf. The Leaf is a car. It was the first mass market EV in the world. And Nissan defined our vision for EV mobility in 2004. when we decided to invest in making an EV car, 2004. That car, Leaf, came to market in 2010. That puts us in a very unique position. We have 21 billion kilometers of zero emission driving behind us already. So we know what the market likes, we know what works for customers, and we know how customers are using their electric cars. And that helps us in the next generation. And that next generation is also on the slide. It's our Aria. And our Aria is really the icon. And it's the result of all of that market analysis over the last 12 years, where we've been able to input not only the battery technology, as we've seen it evolve, but we've also taken all of that market information we have about how our customers are using their Leaf, and we've been able to put it into our connected services on Aria. So now you have an app, you pull it out, and you can play with it. It's not just rational and giving you facts and figures about your drive, which it does as well, but it's also fun. It's telling you how much money you're saving, how much money you saved last month versus if you had been driving a petrol car or a diesel car. You can set different configurations on it. It's giving you real-world feedback on how you're using your car, and we know that the customers want that. People want to understand more about electric mobility as we move to this future. Now, it's not for everyone. 100% electric mobility isn't here right now. Infrastructure, for us, is key. We're working very, very closely with a lot of partnerships, a lot of governments, to help us to develop an infrastructure for society. Nissan has openly said, we will not build it ourselves. We didn't put the petrol pumps in place. We won't put the electric sockets in place. But we do need the partnerships to make sure that as we work towards our vision for this cleaner society, that we have the partnerships there who will help us on our journey, because we can't do it alone. Meanwhile, what we have are lots of different powertrains available on our Duke, Qashqai, X-Trail, and Townstar. Well, Townstar is 100% EV, but Duke, Qashqai, and X-Trail, we have different hybrid solutions available for our customers, and it will meet the different needs. But let me talk a second about the energy ecosystem, rather than just telling you about our portfolio. I mentioned it before. In Nissan, we see zero-emission mobility in a broader context. It's not just about the car. Some of you may remember in 2011, there was a huge earthquake followed by tsunami in Japan. And it absolutely flattened the town of Fukushima, the nuclear plant, created a lot of damage, and created massive power outages that were felt all the way to Tokyo. And just as Nissan were pioneers in 2004 to identify a future vision for electric mobility, at that moment we identified that we had a different opportunity. We really had an opportunity where we could give back and help people. Japan is a country that's quite exposed to earthquakes. And on this particular occasion, Nissan invented vehicle-to-grid. Because Nissan, after that, saw that because of these power outages, where they just couldn't, the generators of power weren't producing enough, the car could help. And the first vehicle-to-grid system was born. And we've had that in Leaf since then, and it's still in operation in Leaf. In Germany, our customers actually make money from selling energy back to the grid. So we're pioneers in this. We know this. Our vision on this has never changed. And again, it's a very unique position for a car company, because we've seen this coming for a long time. But looking forward, we need to keep working on this and keep changing it, because the world is changing very, very quickly. And it's a challenge even for us with our mindset of having seen this many years ago. What are we looking at? We're looking at vehicle-to-grid, as I've mentioned. Energy storage solutions. Charging infrastructure. What we call V2X in general, vehicle to everything. How can the cars connect with each other, which I think is probably linked to some of the optimization of city center throughput and traffic. How do the cars connect to each other? How do the cars connect back to grids, to your house, to your phone? Everything. It should be a seamless experience, and that's part of our vision moving forward. And we know how to do this. Is the video going to work? It's a very short little video, but let's see if it works. We know how to do this because actually we've been doing it for many, many years. We have the Amsterdam Johan Cruyff football stadium that already uses second-hand leaf batteries to power as power generation and power packs. Again, we were pioneers in releasing this technology into second uses. So we call this second life battery use. So the video didn't work, but I'll keep going. And to come back to our area for a second. Through our area, what we have done is take all of that information that we have, take the fact that we were also segment breakers when we released Qashqai in 2007, develop a flagship car that represents our Ambition 2030 vision, and we've just released it. And I think you can see one. I hope you've all had a chance to have a good look at one around the corner here. But it's only our next step. And the point that I would like you to take away from today is that at Nissan, a product, a car, for us, the Aria, for us, is only the next step towards this bigger vision where we have our greener, safer, and more inclusive society with a full ecosystem that the car underpins, but is not the focal point of. Thank you. You're going to wait. You learned the lesson.
I will. Welcome. Yeah. Yeah, I will. Thank you. Okay. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. You know, my name is Bruno. I'm working for Airbus for more than 25 years now. I'm in charge of the design for everything you saw on the aircraft, especially the cabin and cockpit, but includes the front end of the new aircraft and the urban mobility we spoke just already. Starting by the end. Oh, next. No? Can you?
It's tricky.
It's okay. The next one?
Try the other one. Down.
No, it's the last one. Mm-hmm. Again? No.
Yeah.
Sorry. I will say, you know, we're there because the world is changing, but you know, it's not changing now. Was already there, and you know, and the objective for today for me was not to make a corporate presentation from Airbus and where we are, but just to open the question. And the first, you know, in Airbus we think. We're on the way now to rethink what could be the passenger experience. You know, about our vehicle, we made aircraft, as you know, small aircraft, propeller aircraft with ATR, is a subs where to have a subsidiary with Italian. We made A320 to A350. A380 still fly, but we don't produce anymore. And we're doing helicopter and rocket, satellite. You know, is a very huge constellation and a security system. We are very good on that, and we have a division is Airbus Defence and Space for that. And Airbus Defence and Space is in Madrid. You know that for military aircraft, the headquarters is in Madrid. And definitely, you know, for us is when you spoke about the customer centricity is very important. And we're on the way to, and we're already starting. I will show you some example. To have a complete, I will say, a new approach of our customer and definitely on our services and architecture of the vehicle. And you saw already someone, but someone will come soon. Just to be back on the past, if you look, we defined some changes. I will say in 1974, you know, you have a goodbye to the France. You know, you cross the Atlantic with this boat, and you say hello to Concorde. You know, with speed. You know, at this time, we know to have a destination point A to B. Said, okay, we need to be very fast. We made the Concorde, the amazing aircraft, and could be for me is one of the best aircraft still today. Go to New York, and I believe Rémi you will love this aircraft to go to New York in 3 hours from Madrid. But if you go in 2004, you know, you say goodbye Concorde, it's the last one from British Airways, and you were totally disappointed. And we go to, and you saw the Hello Queen Mary, And was a big change, on the transport mean of transportation, because I call the model's reversal, but it's mean today when the means of transport become a destination. It's mean today you saw some. I will show you now, like a big boat. They go to point A to point A. They don't stop. People stay for weeks on the boat, and you saw the project is the first one. The last one is Ile Diaz, is on construction. You have some boat there. The people will stay there. They go for tax issue. They will go on Samaria, on the Caribbean islands. They will stay for months. And some aircraft, some boat, you say you can land on the aircraft with a small propeller aircraft. And you saw the recreation, and Airbus, we think a lot, said, okay, this guy, because the design studio for cabin is in Hamburg, and we saw just in front of Airbus, a big boat is coming with 8,000 people, 10,000, 20,000 people on the boat, said, what they do? And we imagined, said, what can generate revenue on our cabin? Because, today we are sitting on A350, you flew from New York to Singapore, direct is 20 hours. You're sitting on your seat for 20 hours, like that, can you imagine? With a pitch of 32 inches, it means 60 centimeters. Can you imagine? And we need to, for us, was very inspirational to be there, and definitely we need to design a new architecture for. It's not like what you are today. Again, a new vision. If you're looking the airport, or the station, or the harbor, the new harbor from Hamburg is a project. You look in Japan, for example, they plan to build an airport, middle of the sea, and they asked to architects to build a city like Paris, the style of Paris. Said final destination will be not Tokyo, will be the airport itself. The business will be there, and better as me. But for us, we are very concerned about which type of vehicle we need to put there. Could be an aircraft, could be eVTOL, could be helicopters, could be. And what is the revenue model for Airbus? To be just a vehicle or to be an operator? And we have a lot of questions on that. We investigate a lot. We work with this partner. We have a partnership with someone. Okay, with the COVID it was more difficult, but now we will start again, and with the customer. First change is the blurring of landmarks. Who is going fast today? You are Brit, you are living in Paris, I'm French, I'm going to London the weekend. You go by plane or you go by Eurostar? And you have advertising for Eurostar today is very hard for the aircraft industry. He said, if you want to take the plane to go to Paris to London, it means you use the transportation of the 70s. For us, it's very important to take time, to reduce the speed. It could be, I don't know what is the future of the aircraft. You believe with the sustainable, we continue to fly at 900, not far to 1,000 kilometers. If you can fly at 700 kilometers, you reduce by 50% the consumption of fuel, and could be you can have a good experience on board. You don't care to fly to New York to spend 1 hour more on the plane. It's not an issue. If you look on the car industry, it's not a new advertising, but I took this picture because for me it's very important. I say, today if you look at the car industry, I was a car designer, to make the style of what is look like a car. You have someone on the room. It's very important, it's fundamental, because it gives the first impression. But if you look at the advertising of the car industry today, it said 2 7 seats in 15 seconds. It means, you don't go to 0 to 100 kilometers in 4 seconds. Why? It is a selling argument. Could be, yes, but the interior will come more important. I just made this picture because for me it's very important to... I say yesterday, we spoke about autonomous car today. EV cars. EV car is not new. You look on Nissan, you saw the mock-up, it's coming from the 50s. There, on the exhibition. Okay, today what is a car? We put about autonomous car will come. Today, I will say, today is the 30 meters second. It means 130 kilometers per hour. You have a car manufacturer, they already limit the speed limit at 180. Volvo is Volvo, but no one take care about the speed. I'm living in Munich, in Germany. The German guys, it's very important to have a car to drive at 260. Why? And today is a content provider, but tomorrow we believe, and we spoke with car manufacturer. For Airbus point of view, we said the interior will be more important, and you saw on the car the effort is made, what you made on the interior of Nissan is but completely amazing, but what will come on the future will be important. That tomorrow will be a provider plus content consumer, it means a transport and service operator. Exactly, Airbus want to be there. We need to generate revenues with the time, we are there with the digital. Digital will be very, very important. You saw some car, you have some car manufacturer already made the concept car. Audi, BMW, when BMW present a car today, a concept car, they don't present a car. They present your land, your home. You have books, you have flowers, and you have, it's not a car anymore. And with autonomous driving, with the safety, with level 5, it will come, certainly the architecture will be totally different. And for aircraft, we listen a lot on that. And startup now are there. But I'm working for Airbus. If you look, the first advertising for the jet aircraft is a Boeing one, 707. Said, when I say the plane from the wonder, but I don't show the picture for the rest. But today, to be honest, if I saw a picture, if I want to see the picture of the aircraft today, is the boss, you today. And we need to re-enchant, to give a new way to design a new architecture and services. And what is the consequence and what's the lesson learned we have to do? First of all, in Airbus now we have a dedicated team to work on market trends. We have a specialist, sociologue, ethnologue, anthropologue, to work what could be the future of a passenger, the customer of a customer. And second one, we need to have a dynamic business model. We are working a lot on business model. What could be the business model for company future? To build an aircraft, to continue? Yes, certainly. But the revenue is only coming from the aircraft or the hardware? No. I will tell you, definitely no. And we need to have a smart segmentation. The reason why we need to have the portfolio of products for that. Technology trends. Definitely, technology for us, we have a tech company. Airbus is a tech company, but we are looking a lot of technology. We are ready to sign a partnership with other industry. Digitization, we are there. I will show you some example. We create a platform we call Skywise in Airbus. We offer with the digital a lot of additional revenue for our customer. It's amazing it's a new one, it's 2 years old. Virtualization and atmosphere, definitely with a new technology. You go on CES especially, and you saw what we can do with a new technology. Definitely will come. I believe it's Nissan made the concept some years ago, some things on the windows was totally amazing, but we need to be there. And create a lot of opportunity space for everyone. First of all, new interior architecture. We're already starting in Airbus, I will show you some pictures. Connected aircraft and digital transformation will be there. And last one, where today is, we said, urban air mobility. In Airbus, we decide to create a new company inside Airbus, is a division, is in Munich, and we reimagine what could be the air urban mobility. Vertical takeoff or eVTOL with wings, and today we have a vehicle we'll show you with wings. First of all, with Airbus, what you know today on an aircraft, Boeing, whatever, in the past, I will say, the cabin is focused on individual product commodities. So what is a seat, what is a galley, where they cook, this is a lavatory, is commodities. But tomorrow, and what we are today, we create a platform, and the airlines can optimize the platform, and the customer today, they can, can you imagine in the future, you will say, I don't want to go to Madrid to New York. I want to go to my home, what I'm based, or here, to go to, to Boston via New York. And the service, with the digital way, you will manage your home-to-home facilities. It's not only the aircraft ticket. You buy maybe the taxi will take you, maybe the e-scooter, and all the service you can offer, and to the airport. And we need to integrate the airport on the ecosystem. Now, what we do already, this one is part of our product today, is what we call airspace. If you flew on A350 recently, and on A330 Neo, and A320 now is flying only in US in JetBlue, we redesigned the total cabin to have more services. For example, is the in-Transavera. I don't know if you have a pointer here. You saw is the in-Transavera of the aircraft, you enter and the customer can customize. It's the same space, but you can customize in lounge, you can customize in business area, you can customize in bar, or could be a bathroom. You can do what you want. And you can create a place to make a virtual golf. You know, we have used virtual technology. Is flying today. Is flying today. This type of techno. Up. Up. Yeah, sorry. And you know, when you enter on the aircraft, we said, you know, the architecture is totally redefined. I will say, today you enter on the aircraft, or yesterday, like you enter on the lavatory. You know, you enter, you saw the lavatory, you said, oh, it's not so nice. I said, when you enter on your house, on your flat, you are not on the lavatory. And for me, it was very important to say we need to have a wow effect. And we are working a lot of new elements of architecture. We have a lot of inspiration. And if you flew with Qatar, with Singapore Airlines today, it's like that. And we'll come for Lufthansa soon. And we totally redefine the architecture. And definitely we use, you know, and we create a brand, a new brand in Airbus, it's Airspace by Airbus, based on 4 pillars: comfort, ambience, design, and services. It's a combination of everything. You know, I don't want to show you a combination, but you go to Airbus website, you say Airspace, and you have the full story. And it's totally amazing. If you have the experience on board, you know, I flew recently on JetBlue on A320, the small aircraft. It's totally amazing. Okay, again, you know, if you look on the 20th century, what we made the revolution on the city was a lift. Just a question for you. You know, I spoke recently with the CEO from Otis, and he told me Otis transport more as passenger as an aircraft per year of the aircraft industry. But lift was a real revolution for the city. The telephone, the metro, and the car industry was very important. But what will come on the next century, on this one now, will be virtual reality, we believe, or you know, the immersive world, autonomous car, and drones. And was for Airbus was an objective to say, okay, we rethink the urban mobility. This one is a city Airbus City, or City Airbus Next is the last one. We designed already 3. And we made one for single seat, but now we are on the way to build a 5-seater vehicle. You can take off from the center of Madrid to go to the airport in less than, I don't know, 5 minutes. And will be cheaper as a taxi. And definitely. And the reason why now we are working, we're rethinking the business model and what could be the future, because this one is only the beginning. We create a lot of new vehicles. And we need to integrate them on the city. It's not easy. And we have a specialist for. But definitely, it means we redefine our portfolio of product and based on experience for the passenger. You are the passenger. I will say thank you. And
Thank you, Bruno.
Next, could be next. No, next.
Well, thank you everybody for being here. And today I want to share with you a vision, a holistic vision about the future of mobility in several perspectives. So we have talked about infrastructure, connectivity. We're talking about vehicles, but we're also talking about other ways of moving. And I mean, everybody knows that COVID has made a change. In all of us. And this change probably is deeper than what we think in terms of prioritization, the way we live, how we want to live, where we want to work, how we want to move. No? And we can see here it's a portal, a gateway between one world to what's next. No? And we're just at the beginning of a big change. And we're just at the beginning of a big change in terms of mobility, and how we live and how we work. I want to share with you briefly, I mean, when we look into an area or a sector, we always look at trends. Trends that we see that are penetrating into a market and and they could have an impact in a specific sector. No? And here I just have remarked some of them, that some are obvious, but some of them are bringing us challenges. One is aging population. Europe is getting older, but also Western countries are getting older. And when we talk about mobility, this is an issue. We're going to live much longer, and we need to be able to move properly. And any car maker or any infrastructure manufacturer or any aircraft have to take into account that we're going to be much older and we would like to travel. So on the other hand, COVID brought the necessity for human connections. We want to be in touch with people more than ever. We realize the importance of being in touch with people. No? And this again is traveling. It's about moving. We realize about how important it is to live healthy, how important it is to live in a better way. No? But also in terms of consumption, people don't like to have long-term contracts. They are looking at, they want to have what we call a flexi experience, like Netflix. I want to cancel in 1 month, I want to get a car, cancel in 1 month, maybe get a new one because it's summer and I need a bigger car. No? And also when we're talking to urban lives, we see how the last mile is evolving. No? I live in New York today, and it's amazing how all these FedEx and DHL services every day, the building that we live, probably we receive 150 packages every day. So probably in terms of leisure movement, people are using less public transportation, but in terms of commercial, we see a tremendous increase in movement just because of the last mile. In terms of technology, I think what is making a change is data sustainability. Today we can really trace what's happening, and this is going to affect how much, what is my carbon footprint, and this is going to force every single company to take it very seriously. And in terms of sustainability, local production is growing quite a lot. People don't want to buy a bottle of water that was manufactured 6,000 kilometers away. But also in terms of workspace, all of us were working remotely. We don't go to work every day. This is going to stay. So this is affecting also the way we move, the way we live, where we live. And in terms of retail, the physical is returning. Everybody likes e-commerce, but we all like to go shopping and touching and feeling the brands. No? So this is also the center of the city. It's recovering value, and we will see it in the next coming years. No? So just to wrap up, we want things quick, affordable, more sustainable. We also want customization, easy to use, simple to access, healthy lives, more personalized and on demand. And what does this mean in terms of future urban transportation? So cities would have to be more, let me move here, Adrian. Yeah. I'm going to move here. So cities are a living entity. We start to see that the importance of having a smart city, that everything's interconnected. You said today, no? It's not about an infrastructure, it's not about car, it's about connectivity, no? And how the cities could get connected. And this is 24/7. This is 360 days. Is connectivity that should go all together. On top of that, we see new mobility, but the cities have not been prepared for this new mobility. How many kick scooters we see in a very narrow sidewalks in the center of Madrid, and people just cannot walk, no? Why? Because technology went faster than the infrastructure. And now we need to think about how we can make a new infrastructure into the cities to absorb this new type of way of moving, no? Mobility as a service is growing quite a lot, and I think it's going to keep growing in a high percentage in the next coming years and decade. We also, and some of you talk about vertiports. It's a new way of moving. I think a few days ago, there's a regulation approved in the US that we could have eVTOLs. So something that you could think that flying cars was a dream. Well, I would say in 1 or 2 years, probably we're going to see it in many cities. No? Public transportation also is changing. Talking with main operators like RATP in Paris or Metro Madrid, COVID has made a change. People don't want to move underground that much anymore. I mean, today in Paris, the speed limit is limited to 30 kilometers per hour. Many people go overground. They prefer to go overground. Talking with RATP, they are saying, I don't think we're going to get the level of passengers that we have pre-COVID ever, because people are changing the way they move in the city. And public transportation also has to adapt and to make a shift to those new requirements. If you look at cars, the average private vehicle usage time is around 4%. So is this sustainable? Not really. No? So cities are slowly moving also into how to reduce pollutions, increase safety, and means also how you can have less cars. No? If we look at the vice mayor of Oslo, he said by 2030, I hope that all cars in the city will be electric, but we won't have a space for them all. No? I don't think it's only the space. Probably there's no infrastructure to charge at the same time all those cars. No? And this is a big issue as well. I mean, infrastructure, as Adrian was mentioning, it takes very long. Normally it takes 10, 20 years to set up a new infrastructure, and the products and the technology are moving faster than that infrastructure. So if we look at the new mobility, we need to talk about micro-mobility that, I mean, has come to establish itself. Mobility as service will continue to fulfill the needs of the access economy, but also the big unknown remains around AV vehicles and eVTOLs adoptions. And I just want to point out if autonomous vehicles are dead, no? If we look at 23rd of April in 2019, well, they said that in one year, 1 million robotaxis would be in the market, no? But this has not happened, no? But we have been here before. I mean, in 1903, New York Times predicted that airplanes would take 10 million years to develop. So, this is a quote from Singularity University. I don't know if you know. I mean, they're looking at exponential growth, no? And basically what they say is, if we don't think exponentially, an exponential change applies to anything that involves measuring information content, no? So, when we look at the AV vehicles or eVTOLs, we think that today we still have some technical barriers, especially in terms of regulations. But once those barriers would be broken, I mean, and there were regulatory barriers would be established as well, then the market would really speed up. And this is going to be a real change into urban mobility. You will see autonomous vehicles like without drivers, that buses in the city. You could see cargo vehicles in terms of logistics. You could just dial up like your private driver, a private chauffeur, at a very affordable way to basically pick you up and drive you to the city, or take your kids to school, or even a new way of delivery. And also, well, this is a new way, I mean, you were mentioning as well, we work on Hyperloop on the cargo. This is a prototype that we're building for the Port of Hamburg. It's a new way of transporting containers. Every 55 seconds, a new container is being moving. But we also will see soon probably some flying cars. And thank you.
Are we going to use the mic?
Yep. It's automatic.
Oh, okay. So can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we've seen, we've seen and heard from the four of us, and I'm going to ask a few questions, a few trends that we've seen, just to get a slightly more deeper perspective on some of the points, and then we're going to open the floor for some questions from you guys. So hopefully you have some thoughts and questions that you want to raise to the panel. But first, let me pick up on a few common themes through the various presentations, and I think we'll come back to net zero because it's clearly a key one, but we'll come back to that. Oh, I'm on. Okay, so put that one down. So we'll come back to net zero, but I wanted to pick up on two of the other key themes, and I think it came out from everyone, and that is user centricity and how that has really taken the center stage. Certainly from an infrastructure perspective, we're looking at it more than ever before, and I think that even though some of the sectors and some of the sectors like automotive and the aircraft industry have probably been looking at this for a lot longer, it seems to have accelerated in the last couple of years, and I think I'd really like to get everyone's perspective of the relevance and what user centricity means for each of the players here. And secondly, I think another thing that came out, and certainly we're seeing again more and more, is partnership and the value of ecosystems. So let's start with Bruno. In terms of user centricity and ecosystems, how important are those things for Airbus moving forward?
What I tell you is more important, because we don't speak about customer sensitivity for us is exactly to we have a difficulty now. We spoke about sustainability. I will start with that. Sustainability, you say, oh guys, pollute with the aircraft. I can tell you today, I flew from Munich this morning. 30% of my fuel, the fuel of the aircraft, was a SAF, is a sustainable aviation fuel. Was totally green fuel. And was a commercial flight, was not a private flight, was a commercial flight. No, it's coming. And it's mean, I saw on the airport this morning, I never saw the aircraft was so crowded, was so full. And the people now are back to the business, are back to the plane, it's normal. And plane will be, I believe, the last drop of petrol of the world will be for plane, I'm sure. And you saw some industry, I don't want to, especially the train industry was not so nice with us and said, oh, you pollute a lot and everything, but my CEO said, oh, what is the ecological impact to build a TGV line in France, for example? Is huge, like in Spain. You saw the number of tunnels, if you saw the energy who is demanding for that. But definitely for us is customer sensitivity clearly is, I tell you, the point A to point B. We need to manage this one, but it's more on the mindset. You'll be, for long distance plane will be mandatory, definitely, but we want to be sure, we need to be honest with ourselves to have a green aircraft. And we'll come, I don't mention this one, but today we reuse the scrap material of aircraft and we destroy our aircraft, after life of an aircraft is 40 years. And we create a company in Airbus, one in France and one in Spain. We're dismantling the aircraft and we can reuse the scrap, the wings to make the seat of the aircraft and to use the fuselage of the aircraft to make the new window panel. And the interior will be totally sustainable, but on the clever way. It's mean, for the passenger, the customer sensitivity for me is part of that. We have a strong conviction, but it's not fake. I tell you, it's a real life. We invest a massive money on this business, and it's not to follow the EU regulation. Is one for car industry today, but we strongly believe, and we have a new CEO in Airbus. Is Guillaume Faury is pushing a lot for hydrogen. What it will be the future. And I can tell you, customer centricity is coming from that. We need to you will be on transportation on the green, I will say, sustainable way, most as possible. And second one is because we need to win money on that, and everyone we are looking about multimodal transportation, the digital experience on board, how you can will be more seamless for you as a passenger. And we have a lot of opportunity. Look, Google today. For me, it's difficult to look. Everyone knows Google Maps. I was on the taxi this morning. She used Google Maps, but no one knows all the pictures and the data from Google Maps is coming from Airbus. All the pictures from the satellite, and we sold them for zero. 2.0. And they know with the digital how to generate revenues on that. And we need to be there, definitely. And this one is part of the experience.
Okay. Please, same question to you from a Nissan perspective. How have things changed?
Well, in one sense, they haven't changed because we spend so much of our time with market intelligence. So that's always been the foundation of all of our product definition. It's been looking at how the cars are used. So we know car by car and customer segment by customer segment, average kilometers driven a day, if it's in an urban or extra urban environment, so we have a very clear detail on and information on how the cars are being used, which allows us then to make sure we're designing and defining the products to the level that they need to be at. What I think has changed, though, and we're much more focused now on is, I like the exponential graph. Once we start moving and shifting, fusioning the car industry and the digital world, this change is happening exponentially. And what I see now with our customer-centric approach is what I like to call purposeful technology is becoming key. It's not about technology for the sake of technology. It's really about tailoring technology to how the customers are using their cars. And for me, the best definition of purposeful technology is that it's so seamless, the customer doesn't even know they have it until it's taken away. So when you get used to something, if I take it to the car industry, we have keyless entry cars. So you come up close to your car and the car either unlocks automatically, or you hit a little button and the car unlocks. The day we have to go back to rooting in our bags to try and find the keys, we'll miss that technology, right? But now we're so used to it, it happened, it was so easy to use it, nobody needed any explanation about how to use it. We just intuitively knew how to use it. And that for me is really where we need to focus our energy when we're talking about customer centricity. In this new world, in this world of future mobility, what are those technologies that are so purposeful and so intuitive that the customer doesn't even know they have them until they're gone?
What about ecosystems and partnerships? You mentioned it during the conversation about EV charging, but again, it's wider than that as well in terms of the value of ecosystems.
Yeah, it is wider than that. We are definitely looking at the circular economy as a whole. I mentioned second life battery usage and how we've already got examples of that. For us, that's really key. Sustainable materials are extremely key, and more so as we move forward. So how do we repurpose the batteries, the materials? Car usership, depending on where you are in the world, is of a different average. In some of the Scandinavian countries, it's 4 years, and you buy a new car as car ownership. In other countries, it's much longer. We need to factor that in as well, about what that means in terms of the ecosystem that we need to be able to provide. It's not the same having a car that's 13 years old in terms of the level of connectivity or the level of technology that it can have. So how do we provide solutions for those customers in this new ecosystem environment? So I'm listing a lot of problems. There's a lot of challenges out there, but they're all super relevant to the world that we're moving towards. And these are exactly the questions we need to be asking ourselves as we look to this bigger ecosystem. And again, partnerships, the complexity is exponential. We've moved away from cars which are, metal and 4 wheels, or the complexity of what we do now is just incredible. The car now, my car takes my iPhone. Yeah, the iPhone's great, but someone said I put my iPhone just on top of my wireless charger, and my CarPlay takes all of the information and creates an Apple environment inside of my car. Scary. Fantastic. So that complexity is a very different challenge versus what we've seen in the past. And it requires a lot of different expertise, not all of which is readily available in our traditional car companies. So those partnerships, in order to develop the latest, greatest, and next thing, are key for us, not just from an infrastructure point of view, but also on a content point of view.
Great. Jaime, you working as a consultant and a partner as part of these ecosystems, you obviously work with a lot of different companies. Are you seeing the same consistent drive for partnership in the digitization space and the user centricity, or do you see any mind shift change over the last 5-10 years in terms of how companies are going about their development programs?
I think there's still a shift to be made in the car industry. No? I mean, in the past, you used to invest together different brands in developing engines, for example, or gearboxes. But today, as you were mentioning, technology is super complex. I mean, to integrate these ecosystems, no? And I still have not seen really that much collaboration within companies, no? And the only way that this could become exponential is that we get to a standard. We get to a standard that could be used in the city and it could be used in the cars, no? I don't know if you remember at the end of the 90s when the mobile phone basically became a standard. It was because of GSM. Everybody got together and realized we need to use the same system. And in 3 years, 60% of the world were using a mobile phone. When we talk about IoT, when we talk about connectivity, there's still no standard. And until there's no really harder collaboration, I think it's going to be very difficult and it's going to be a challenge. Because as you were saying, I mean, you need to interconnect the cars with the spaces, with infrastructure. And if one speaks Japanese and the other English, probably you're going to lose something in translation. And that could provoke an accident.
No, I think you're right. And working in that space, certainly, the vehicle connectivity, CV2X, for example, or V2X as the general term is, and CV2X specifically, is obviously an emerging standard, but it still isn't universally adopted, and there are still some challenges to be worked out. But again, moving in the right direction. And I think, from an infrastructure, so vehicle to infrastructure, vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to consumer, it will all really accelerate when those standards are fully adopted, whether it's enforced by regulation or whether it's adopted by the market or a combination of both. So I definitely think there is more work to be done. But certainly from my perspective, I've seen with my work with OEMs over the last 2 years, a big shift, particularly in the, shall we say, openness to working with a wider set of partners, particularly in the infrastructure space. And I think that's to be applauded and something that we should continue to develop and work on. And that goes for, aircraft manufacturers and airports as well, particularly in the interface and the digital, how to offload data from, if you have a lot of data on an autonomous vehicle, you have an awful lot more data on an aircraft. And many technologies to offload that data. So it's a key part of that ecosystem. So going back to almost the big question, especially with COP27 ongoing in Egypt, or maybe over now, but the challenges of moving to net zero, or certainly significant reductions in the environmental impact of transport. I'm going to go around the room again to a degree and see, I mean, obviously the challenges are somewhat the same and somewhat different in the aerospace and car industry. But let me ask Bruno, what do you think is the biggest challenge for net zero or the net zero goals in the aerospace industry?
I will say we identify already the challenge. The technology is in terms of sustainability, we can make an aircraft, an EV aircraft. It will be impossible. Can you imagine if I put a battery in an A350? I made some calculation yesterday because I anticipate your question. And I will say, you enter on the cabin, you have no place, will be full of battery, and you can fly to Barcelona, maximum. And could be one passenger. If you have a chance, you can put one pilot. Make any sense? It's not possible.
To Barcelona.
Madrid to Barcelona. Madrid to Barcelona. or maybe Barcelona city center to Barcelona airport, I would say. And it will be very tough. But definitely, for us, the most sustainable in terms of technology is hydrogen today. And the reason why we are working, we have a dedicated, again, entity for that, and we are working with partnership. I'm not a specialist for that, but we have a specialist for. And definitely we will, we design an aircraft around the engine. We don't design an aircraft, after that we put 2 or 4 engines. No, or 1 engine. So no, we will show what is the technology, and we need to make an integration. But can you imagine when the hydrogen will be available? It's already available, but we can find a way. But I would say quite soon. Not tomorrow, but in a couple of years. But the architecture of the vehicle will be totally different. Totally different. And definitely the engine integration will be totally different. And again, for me, a battle on my part, I would say inside out, we need to work with the cabin. We don't design on the past, the engineer made an amazing machine. It's okay, now it's empty, you have a tube, find a way. Now it's finished. Now everyone understood on the management and the airline, the customer are coming to us and to say, okay, what could be the experience on board? And again, I would say fuel cell hydrogen is a solution. And second one, very important, is the material, the new material. It's finished to use petrol to build a new material. We'll continue, we'll buy someone, definitely. But I would say 80% of the new material will be recycled.
Fantastic. Clea?
So what the biggest challenge is the complexity of it. It's when we talk about carbon neutrality, we talk about every single tiny step being net zero on the way to building the car and in the use of the car. It's not just zero emissions when you drive it, yeah? So when we look at carbon neutrality, and Nissan has again said by 2050 we will achieve it, and last year we made the first announcement on the way. For example, in the UK, what we're doing with our plant, it's a good example. We're putting £1 billion in over the next 4 years. £1 billion over the next 4 years on the first step towards carbon neutrality. The manufacturing plants are enormous polluters. We focus very much on the cars and the emissions of the car when you're using it. But it's the full process, and it's the holistic view that's the challenge. So what are we doing in the UK? Well, first of all, the whole plant will be solar powered, which is a massive achievement. It will have its own microgrid to power itself. It'll only produce EV cars. And it will also we will also build on-site a gigafactory for the battery production, bringing those supply chains right down to zero. So we're not shipping batteries from China to Europe to build the cars. But it's just the first step. It's going to take us, we estimate, 25 years to get there. I mean, that's the complexity of it. So I think it's the full process that we need to look at. And in our case, the biggest challenges are around the manufacturing, supply chains, because also, additionally, we want our suppliers to be carbon neutral. If we're going to say our cars are carbon neutral, it means that we're validating that every single thing that's going in there is, and we've tens of thousands of parts. So it's a mammoth task, which a path we need to go down. We're in this common global activity to get to carbon neutrality. So we know we need to go down this path, but it's that complexity of the manufacturing side. Hydrogen, other technologies, battery, other technologies around the car itself are available. So I think we have enough technology inside the car in terms of the powertrain. But it's the bigger picture for us that's the biggest challenge.
No, thank you. I mean, it's, as you say, it's the holistic view which needs to be addressed. Similarly, from us, it's not about the operation of the infrastructure, it's the building of that infrastructure, which is the biggest contributor, which we need to deal with as much as the operational side. So I was just thinking, we have a lot of people here. Do we have any questions from the audience for the panel? Oh, plenty of questions. Let's start. Do we have mics?
Mike?
Yes, Jackie.
Oh,
Y por si acaso pueden preguntar en español o en inglés, siéntanse libres.
see. So we have some questions at the front here.
Yes, there is one here and some there.
Okay, let's do the one at the back first.
Hi. My question was about the connectivity that some of you have talked about. And there's still people that has this fear, like to the things connected to the artificial intelligence, or I don't know how it's called. What would you say to these people to convince them, or I don't know if that's the word, to make their mind to these new technologies that are the future? So that's the question.
Okay, so I'm going to ask Jaime to answer that one first, and then...
Well, I would say artificial intelligence is going to help us to have a better connectivity, but it's not the solution. But really machine learning, and it would help to basically operate better and improve day after day. But I don't think it's just the solution.
So the question was, how do we need to convince? In that case, if we don't believe it's the solution, and we'll come back to Clea and Bruno, if we don't believe it's the solution, what is the solution to increase connectivity?
What is the solution?
Yeah.
Take note, everyone.
We need to build an ecosystem, because it's not one single solution, and we need to build that up. And until that is not framed properly, I don't think. Machines will need to connect based on patterns and instructions, but we need to define those instructions. And I don't think today those instructions are written as an ecosystem to interconnect vehicles or things to move around together.
Okay, I have an interesting. I don't disagree with what you're saying, Jaime, but I think I made a comment when you were mentioning about placing your phone on the car, and it suddenly turned into an Apple universe, which scared me. Being an Android user, by the way, that's the only reason. So
It could be an Android
guessing
universe.
my question, there are some people that might find that a bit, intrusive. But what would you say from a vehicle? Because clearly you're working down that, interoperability, immersive experience kind of role, and I know Airbus are doing similar things with their cabins. So what would you say to users who are a little reticent to that kind of experience?
I think if people are concerned about it, we need to understand why the concern is there. If the concern is about privacy and access to personal data, the laws are very strong in Europe. The GDPR is extremely tight in Europe. So there's an education element around explaining that actually we don't get access to a lot of, in the US, they're not the same laws, right? So here, the consumer is quite well protected. So that's the first thing I would say. So if that's motivating the concern, I think it's about explaining that and reassuring people that on that end. If it's just that people don't want the complexity or the fuss or the point is that it's an experience. And I think I go back to my purposeful technology. The objective is that people don't choose it. Actually, the people are immersed and enjoy it, and it becomes seamless in their life. So it becomes, when I get into my car, this is how my car is. It's not something that somebody has to worry about configuring and updating and turning on and this and that and maybe a more conscious thing. So the objective we have is that it's just a seamless experience. But the point is that a seamless experience may not be to everyone's liking. My phone, if I don't put it on my wireless charger, I don't get my Apple environment. If I keep it in my bag, it doesn't happen, right? So there is always options, and that's key also as we move forward.
Perfect, thank you. Shall we take another question? One at the front here.
I will try, hello to all the audience. I will try to ask in English. I just write it because it's a bit tricky question. So today's cities are built around the cars. We have the example of the great American cities born in the beginning of the 20th century. So these huge infrastructures such as roads, bridges, tunnels will cease to be used if we move towards for a model of mobility by air or other transport solutions like Hyperloop. So what do you think? Will the key of the future of mobility be the conversion of the structures created around the traditional car or the creation of people-centered cities from zero?
Well, so let me start by answering a few things, and then I'll share it. So you're absolutely right that cities today have been built around the automobile, as it was called, car, and there are cities which have started to take a slightly different approach. South America, different places. Paris has started with the 15-minute city. Barcelona has obviously taken through their city planning solutions, have taken also a slightly different approach. So there are many solutions to the problem. But what we can see is that the shift has started, and we are starting to see more space being given up to active travel. We're seeing more integration, more green space in cities. But we are still seeing increased development of highways, although a lot of it is about regenerating what is already there. And our view from an infrastructure perspective is that we are going to see an increased digitization to improve the functionality and capabilities of what we already have, rather than just adding new. And in some cases, we've already started talking about how we can change what's there for something else. So changing car lanes to bus lanes, changing bus lanes to cycle lanes, taking some of the space back for different types of environment. One of perhaps the trickiest situations we have today in cities is a little counterintuitive, but certainly we heard Jaime speaking about the impact that COVID's had on transit, for example. And if you look at all of the major cities with large transit and well-built out transit, Madrid, London, New York, Paris, the challenge is that the demand isn't necessarily going to come back to where it was pre-COVID. We're going to see a massive challenge in terms of its funding in the next couple of years. Are they able to keep the service that they have, or do they need to keep the service? And in the case in some US cities, they have got to the point where there is no longer any demand for certain rail lines. So if you have a railway, what do you do? So it's not just roads and vehicles, it's all forms of transit needs to be reviewed in terms of the new behaviors. So it's about re-looking at everything, not just one particular area. So the challenges are reasonably well understood, but the solutions are what's tricky, because the solutions take a long time to implement in a lot of cases. But some of the new technologies that we're looking at, like autonomous vehicles, demand-responsive transit, urban air mobility, are starting to give a lot more flexibility. And I think we will start seeing some bigger accelerated shifts when the autonomous vehicles are a bit more prevalent than they are today. And I challenge Jaime on the autonomous vehicle situation. I think we are further along than people realize. And in terms of urban air mobility, I know for a fact we are further along then perhaps people realize we're going to be building the first vertiports as of next year. So it is happening.
Just to support you, you know, worldwide, you have, as aircraft manufacturer, we are less than 5 worldwide. You know, Airbus, Boeing, Comac now, Embraer, and Bombardier. You know how many companies for air urban mobility, UAM, we call, more as 500 today, worldwide. You know, you saw the difference, and you know, 5 years ago, no one anticipated this one. No one.
Yeah.
And it's very important, you know, we're on the change.
And again, just going back to the car point, people still like their cars. There is still, people would still choose, and all the research supports this, people still choose to spend money on having a car, even if it's standing in the driveway not being used. Crazy as it sounds. Oh, but it's true.
Just to, but you are aware, but...
I just buy a car, so...
And 2 days ago, you know, you have a CEO from a UAM, car manufacturer, starting the presentation like Remy, said, you know who? But the guy said, okay, how can people, how can make business if the people use a car 4 or 5% of the time? And he said, try to reimagine what could be the industry. Definitely the industry will be different. I'm sure. I don't know, for me, I have a son, he's 22, he's not interested by car. It's difficult for me to be a car designer at the beginning. Said, why? I have Uber. Why? You know, and the mindset will change. And definitely for you, for your generation, many of you in the room, transportation will be totally different on the next 5 years, I'm sure.
Just if I can jump in.
Sorry, we just took a big punt at the car.
Yeah, if I can jump in. No, so you're right. I mean, the car, I laugh, it's true. The car sits idle, we drive to work, we leave it parked outside. But we're missing something. That's a rational analysis, and we are emotional human beings.
Yes.
And the emotional link to the car isn't just gone because it doesn't make sense to leave my car sitting in a car park while I work. Yeah? Because what does a car represent? A car still represents freedom. A car still represents freedom.
And in Germany, status.
And status, yes, but and more than Germany, exactly, and in a lot of places, status.
Yeah.
And so I think it's you know, it's factually correct, and absolutely so, but it's not the full picture, and I think that's why we all of the predictions show, as you have said, Adrian, all of the predictions show that up to 2030, the European TIV, the industry volume, will continue to grow. In spite of everything we're talking about today, people will keep buying cars, and it's because we are emotional human beings.
Sure.
Next question.
Thank you. Well, hi. I have a question related with okay, so 25% of the emissions of the greenhouse gases of the European Union are emitted by transportation, so I mean, it makes sense because it's a huge industry, so it has a huge impact. But taking into account that the EU goals for 2050 are like to be totally net zero, as Clee said, is not only focused on the driving part, but also on the production part. Do you think it's going to be possible to have, from 2050, a totally net zero industry, taking into account that, for example, if we are going to turn everything to electric, if we're talking about electric batteries, it implies to have lithium, and the extraction of lithium is highly contaminating. So, do you think that for 2050 is going to be able to have also like a net zero extraction of that lithium or hydrogen? It also has like a negative impact in the environment. And the other question is that not only like possible, but do you think it's going to be accessible for mostly of the population? Because now it's like it's something new, so maybe it's not affordable for all of us. But we hope that for 2015 it's not only going to be possible, but also something common and general. Because if it's not, then why do we do this?
So, I mean, there are many challenging questions there,
But let me at least start from the perspective of from the infrastructure perspective, and I think we've looked at those numbers as well. We are involved in a lot of those processes. I think it's worth pointing out that you say 25% of the greenhouse gas emissions are transportation. What we need to look at is what type of transportation, and certainly a lot of that, and I think the number is around 85–90% of that 25% is about logistics. So it's not movement of people, it's about movement of goods.
80 is logistics.
Yeah, it's 80 logistics. So what we need to factor in, and we've been talking about Nissan's role. Now Nissan has maybe not heavy goods vehicles, but you have the light duty vehicles and medium duty vehicles. So clearly that is part, and I'm sure that I'll let Clee talk about that. But it's about understanding that. So everyone, and back to what Clee was saying, it's about that ecosystem and everybody looking at every part of the ecosystem. And one of the things that we can do is perhaps think about what we're buying, where we're buying things from. It's as much about that as it is about making the transportation of the goods, shall we say, net zero as well. Yeah. So there is a challenge. And you were saying about lithium, for example. Lithium is very much an issue when it comes to batteries, and there's a lot of work going on about finding less harmful ways of where we find it from, how we get it, and how we mine it. But I think we've talked about alternative technologies, and electrification and batteries are not going to be the only solution. We have hydrogen fuel cells, we have biofuels. There are many ways that will all combine into that ecosystem to achieve those targets. But it's not going to be easy, and I think that's the clear. And no one party is going to be the ones to provide the solution. But I think what we've heard today is, from the infrastructure, from the car manufacturers, from the aerospace industry, that everyone is taking this really, really seriously. Again, if you were to go back 5 years and speak to a car manufacturer and say, would you believe that you're not going to be producing any internal combustion engines in 5 years? The answer would most likely be never. That's never going to happen. Maybe not Nissan, because you started early.
But we started earlier.
Yeah.
But 5 years ago, we weren't thinking of saying we're going to stop internal combustion engine development for new models. Absolutely not.
Yeah. And that would be the same for Airbus. You wouldn't have been investing quite the same. And it's the same for us from an infrastructure perspective to say that, we were always looking at the better, more greener ways to make cement and to create infrastructure. But it was, number one priority was cost. Always. But now, not the case. Number one priority is, because of all of these, commitments that have been made, number one priority is how do we make this greener? Yeah. How do we reduce carbon? Number one priority. Yeah. I like this question. Because there's a lot in this question. Right? It's the lithium. Yes, absolutely. We're looking at ways to get it in a better way, to have it refined in a more sustainable way, and shortening those supply chains. We're looking at reducing the amount of lithium that we'll put into the batteries. So over time, that technology will change as well, and there'll be less and less lithium. Ultimately, we'll land in what Nissan is calling all solid-state batteries in 2028, and it'll be totally different chemistry. So lithium, absolutely, and it's very valid. Even though we did bring out Leaf, this is really the beginning now. We're in the era where this technology in this world is taking off, and that's where the research is being done, and we're going to see shifts in the technology becoming available very quickly. Hydrogen is really interesting. Yeah. And the EU is pushing hard. I mean, the EU last year, about July 21, signed a green energy intention. I can't remember the official name, but it was a green energy deal. I think it's called the Green Energy Deal.
Okay. Something imaginative like that.
Or it's Green Deal for Energy. Something like that. Yeah.
And one of the pillars in that is about how to increase the hydrogen usage in Europe. But the problem is that hydrogen right now, to be able to use it, is extremely energy intensive. The hydrolysis process eats up a lot of energy to create the hydrogen so that you can then use it. So it's not viable. But by 2030, there's 3 phases defined by the EU. And basically, broad brushstrokes, by 2030 we start to shift into a situation where in the EU, the hydrogen produced will be green hydrogen. Yeah. And that's a game changer. Because then when we look at carbon neutrality and we look at the full picture of things, now hydrogen has a part to play because it's not a negative contributor to the picture. The other thing is that just in October, 2-3 weeks ago, the EU also signed an intention where there will be hydrogen filling stations every 100 kilometre on all of the main highways in Europe. It had previously been proposed that it would be every 150, and it had previously been proposed that it would be 2031. And the EU said, no, every 100 and in 2028. So there's a clear intention there. Now, from the car industry point of view, for example, is that hydrogen going to come to us, or will it go to Bruno here beside me? As Bruno's mentioned, there are industries that can't take batteries and that will rely on hydrogen. And so the production of hydrogen and the usage of hydrogen we can foresee will be prioritized for those industries where there's no alternative. We have an alternative, at least in our passenger cars and small vans sphere. So the hydrogen one it's a very complex discussion, but ultimately a very interesting one. But I think it's not the here and now for the car industry. Definitely, it's not where we're going.
I'd like to unpack just I think the final question on equity. So the availability of these things for everyone, I think, is key. And again, we've seen in the EU, there's always been a greater focus on equity than there has been in perhaps some of the other geographies. But if we look at some of the significant changes in the US with the $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure plan, which hopefully after today is still in place, but we'll see. If you look at that $1.2 trillion, biggest investment in infrastructure, which includes obviously EV and charging and hydrogen infrastructure, 40% of that money has to go to making this infrastructure available for underserved areas. It's a fundamental underlying principle now within all US federal investment that there is a much greater focus, and that has only been in the last 2 years in this new plan. So it's a massive, massive difference. So the $7.5 billion that they're investing in EV charging, again, 40% of that will be for installation of EV chargers in rural areas and in underserved areas to ensure that they have access to the technology. Now, there are challenges. Big one is that all of that money is for installation. And one of the big challenges is the operational costs and how much it costs to do that. And again, what we'll have to see is some challenging changes to the business models. And Bruno was mentioning business models before. But we need to really take that into consideration to really make sure that it's not just as sustainable in the first few years of operation, but for the longer term. And I think there's still more to do in the US, in Europe, everywhere by that point.
And on top of that, I will say,
I have a flight to catch. Yes, I do. Yeah. Sorry, guys. Yeah? Okay.
No, perdonen, porque tiene que tomar un avión.
Sí.
Estamos on time. Sorry, she had to take a plane. So we are on time. We have more questions. Is possible or not?
How far are we from the airport?
Depends of the traffic.
Have we got an air?
Depends on the traffic, seriously.
Waiting for you.
Yeah.
We have a
Sorry, Adrian.
prototype.
No.
Cinco minutos.
5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Okay.
No, wait, just to add on that, it's very important because we are cross-industry here, on the table, and we will work together.
Yeah.
And we are working together.
And just on the inclusivity thing, so that was the third leg of the question that I think is very important. It's something actually in Nissan we take very, very seriously because, as I said at the beginning, our Ambition 2030 has 3 pillars: cleaner, safer, more inclusive. And we know that where we can act on that is actually allowing access to the technology for as many people in society as possible. And as we move to EVs, it is a problem because the cost is high. EVs are expensive now at the beginning. But it's also why we're working so hard on the technology to make sure that we can get make it as available as possible to everyone as part of that inclusivity.
So, shall we do one more question, if there is one? Oh, sorry. If you speak up a little bit, we can.
First of all, the value of NFTs has plummeted this year. So I'm not worried about the fact we haven't done it yet. Look, the metaverse is a whole new universe for us to operate inside. And we're looking at all aspects of it. What it means in terms of virtual reality, what it means in terms of augmented reality, what it means in terms of NFTs, digital twins. We're working with our alliance partners on that as well. They've just announced something in the Paris Motor Show on digital twin on one of their concept cars. So we know that it's part of this world, this universe that we're headed towards. And yes, we're working on it, but I can't confirm to you right now it'll be an NFT with this, because it's a very volatile environment at the moment still. And again, it goes back to our target to be purposeful in everything that we do, not just do things for the sake of it. It'll have to fit into the wider scheme and the wider strategy we have on our products. But yes, it's as a concept, of course, we're open to it and we're studying it and looking at the possibilities. Yeah. Yes, I'm not sure if on that one particular. Yes, that's an example, but overall there are benefits to it. It's a whole new world that we have to adapt to. Thank you.
Just to add to that, I think one of the residual values, and we were talking about Second Life batteries, for example, one of the residual values of a battery is its life. How has it been charged? How has it been used? So obviously that is already being stored and tracked and monitored. Would that be relevant as an NFT? Certainly as within the digital twin. But yeah, there is value to that information for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's working.
Hola, soy la mala de la película. I'm the bad of the film. So we have to say goodbye. Really very interesting. We will continue. Thank you all at the public, that the schools and designers, and this is the House of Design in Madrid, and you are welcome for next time. We go on with Japanese. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.